again by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Ilya able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
Perry in the face, 1-1. Score! Off the floor! Paul Kariya!
All right, we're back a couple days later from our last show, and man, you know what? It almost feels fitting that we come back 3 days later to address these last three games, mostly just the St. Louis Blues series, but nobody really wanted to talk about that Blues loss yesterday. You know, the Arizona loss, it is what it is, but this 2-game stretch here against St. Louis on Saturday and tonight is it's the epitome of the Ducks season so far. It feels like rock bottom. We're only 10 games into the season.
It definitely feels rock bottomish. It feels a lot like the previous two seasons under Carlisle, under a shortened season with the first season for Aikens. It's just PTSD just watching these last two games, going like, oh God, we're back to the way we were. Everything that had been told to us that was going to change and get better, and people were improving, and everyone was on board. It reverted right back to the old way, and it was not fun to watch. I say it as nicely as possible.
I mean, we knew St. Louis was a great team, and it's not like the Ducks have looked great this season. They came off a couple decent games, I guess you could call it, against Arizona. But man, you know, the start to yesterday's game, 3 goals on 6 shots in the first 3 minutes, and you know, it's not just that number and that stat right there, 3 goals in the first 3 minutes and 6 shots. It's the way they were scored. It's like they didn't show up. You know, they were lazy on coverages, left guys open. I think one of the goals, Sanford just walked out from behind the net, wrapped it around, and got his own rebound to put it past Gibson. Kiru scored on a breakaway. Like, that was the worst start I've seen from this team in a while, and they've had some very bad starts over the last, like, really similar to that game against St. Louis, but just like the laziness on all those plays. Like Fowler on one play didn't really cover his man. Shattenkirk with the turnover and another. Like, man, it's unreal to see that kind of play from the Ducks. I mean, it's not impossible, not unbelievable. It's just ridiculous that we're seeing it.
Yeah, like usually you might see like one person makes a boneheaded play or a mistake, or you know, dang it, you know what, I should have played that one differently. It was a total team effort attitude. They just like everyone just staring at things, going like, I should probably engage this, but I'll wait and see what happens. And it was that mentality of just wait and see what happens, and maybe the puck will bounce to me, and then I can start going or something like that. And yeah, that walkout by Sanford was just, anyone who attempts to do that in the NHL should be buried on that attempt. I mean, they're going to have to pay a price. The fact that he walked out, doesn't get hit, then goes around the top of the crease, doesn't get hit, gets a shot, then goes all the way to the far end, has his own rebound, and then roofs it over a sprawled goalie. It's like goalie's got to play defense. Apparently he has to score now, and he's also got to make amazing saves all over the place. But just top to bottom, everywhere, everyone sucked. It was just horrible, that game, especially that first period, really.
Yeah, we saw a couple roster changes for that game. It was announced that Grant was out with an upper body injury, so David Backes makes his season debut. And Troy Terry ends up sitting the last game, and Isaac Lindstrom comes in, you know, fresh off a 2-goal game-winning performance for the goals the night before. So, you know, a well-deserved intro back into the lineup for him. He didn't look necessarily bad that game either. Troy Terry, you know, again, another, in my opinion, I think you would agree with this, another deserved rest for him, if you want to call it, or benching, or whatever you want to call it. You know, he ended up missing that game, and you know, I thought David Backes looked pretty good, but you know, when you look at the summation of things, a 6-1 loss and the way that game started, it's really hard to draw any positives from that one.
Yeah, and just a note to the Ducks, you got to at least let us get a little bit drunk before you start playing like crap and we're down by 3 goals. You can't do that in the first 2.5 minutes of a game because that's not fun for anybody at that point. We don't even have a buzz going at that point.
Yeah, it was brutal. We're not going to dwell too much on that game because in a lot of ways it draws parallels to the game today too. Scoreline fairly similar, and it really was a lot of the same from what we saw yesterday tonight, except for the really slow start from Anaheim. I thought they actually came out and had a decent first period. They outshot the Blues, I think, 7-6. They kept it a pretty defensively tight game, and obviously Silfverberg picks up the goal and the only goal of the first period, but beyond that second period, third period on, it felt a lot like Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it was a power play goal too, and I think we've only had one this season. We were ranked dead last coming in, so to get one early definitely had a better feel, and especially Silfverberg just shooting and not try to wait for something to happen, fairly quickly off the faceoff. I had high hopes. The period looked pretty good. They had their feet moving. They seemed engaged. They were making passes tape to tape, and one thing that I think is really critical for them to start scoring goals is get asses in front of the goalie, get it in front of the other goalie and start creating a little bit of havoc, something where the goalie doesn't see it. And then there's maybe a rebound opportunity, but then that just builds on it. If you can do that shift after shift, you get more of those chances. I thought they did a good job of that in the first period, and then as the game kind of wore on, they kind of reverted back. But at least it was a good start, and at least they seemed like they had their legs and they had a purpose, and they wanted to try. They were trying to shoot to score. So
yeah, the big thing we have to mention, we'll go back to this after and talk a lot more about it after we recap this game, but Adam Henrique was a healthy scratch for this game. No real reasoning or update on why, whether it's a benching after a 6-1 thrashing and a message to a guy who led the Ducks in scoring like, hey, you've only got 2 points in 9 games, you got to step it up, or as always with a healthy scratch of a notable player, the trade rumors start to come up, right? So we'll cover that one a bit more later, but Agazino comes in for Adam Henrique in this one, and Troy Terry jumps back in for Isaac Lindstrom. But getting back to the first period there, we mentioned how the Ducks got off to a hot start, got a power play goal. How much of their hot start, though, is attributed to the fact that St. Louis kind of shot themselves in the foot there with 2 early penalties? It's a lot easier to take the reins and take hold of a game and start with the front foot when you've got the first 4 minutes of the first 10 of the game, you've got 2 power plays, right? So it's a little bit easier to get off the gate, a lot faster than Saturday night.
But even then, I thought the Ducks were moving. They seemed more, I hate to cliche it and say engaged, but they were going after the puck. They were creating turnovers. I mean, they attacked the goalie when he was behind the net, and that kind of created a chance or opportunity. And so, some excitement, scoring chances. We don't ever really see that, and not necessarily most of them were on the power play. I think it definitely helped that shot total because I think, almost or a little bit halfway through, Ducks were out shooting them like 7-2 or something like that. So they're making it a little bit easier for Gibson as well. Power plays are obviously maybe going to help push it, but I think St. Louis can roll 4 lines, so even after the penalty kill happens, they should have been. I would have expected them to come out a little bit more, faster and pushing the pace against the Ducks. So I kind of give the Ducks at least a little bit of credit. They were at least hanging with a St. Louis team that is deeper and, quite frankly, better than them for that first period.
Yeah, I think where a lot of the credit comes is later on after those power plays, because I feel like the Ducks did keep up the pressure. Ricard Raquel got a couple of chances, and Ville Husso made a couple good saves. And honestly, I was a bit shocked. I mean, he was a bit shaky in terms of rebounds during this game, but not a guy who has a ton of NHL experience coming in against a team that's desperate to try and rebound off a 6-1 loss. And I felt like he was steady. And Silfverberg does hit the post later on in the first period, and the Ducks could have potentially been up 2 or 3-0 out of that. But as it always is, they don't have really the finishers on this team to pile it on when they have those chances. They come out with a 1-0 lead, which is nice at the time. But you look back now and think, man, if they had potted another one, or if Silfverberg kind of gets that under the crossbar there and makes it 2-0, how much of a better outlook do they have for the rest of this game?
Yeah, and Silfverberg planted his ass kind of right in front or right by the goalie and got that chance a little tight off the post. Unfortunate. Because that could have definitely sent us the confidence that we've been lacking for the last 2.5 seasons. That could have definitely been the statement. Hey, we got 2 goals. You know, we even got a power play goal out of it, and we're up 2-0 going in the second period. Let's keep going on it. So a lot of chances in and around the net that, you know, once again, just, yeah, like you said, weren't really capitalized on. Like, they were there and they just somehow just missed it or whiffed on it, or someone made just, you know, an extra little pass or something that just didn't quite work out. And unfortunately, we need all the things to start going our way for that confidence to at least incrementally build moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean, when you think that, you know, the Blues had 6 shots in the first 3 minutes of Saturday's game, and the Ducks hold them to 6 shots throughout the entire first period on this one, it felt like a better effort. And, you know, you take into account, yeah, it's a back-to-back, and if any team should be tired coming off yesterday's performance, it'd probably be St. Louis, the way they kind of took it to the Ducks the other day. But, you know, this is the type of period I think the Ducks need to have in all their games. This is how they should start. A little bit, you know, calm and reserved, and take advantage of the opportunities you have, and try and limit the shots against, because how many times have we seen so far this year, you know, the Ducks will come out of the first period and there are to be 14, 15 shots on the board for the other team. Mm-hmm. And, you know, whether John Gibson's on his game or not, you know, the Ducks could still come out of that period tied or leading, depending on how well John Gibson is playing. But it is a nice little change there, despite the outcome of this game, to see them get off and start so well and kind of, you know, not really scrape their way to a 1-0 lead. I felt like they deserved it.
Yeah. It was pretty much the highlight over the last 2 games. That was it.
Why do you think we're talking about it so much?
Period.
We have to talk about something.
Focusing in on the one little nugget of gold we got here, and we're really just propping it up. Look at how great this one thing was.
Look how great this first period was, where the Ducks limited him to 6 shots.
Oh my God, it's walking. It stood up. And then immediately craps its pants.
Yeah, immediately into the second period. Lindholm gets an interference call, which I thought was a pretty weak call. It's interference, I guess, if you want to take it textbook. He does interfere with Kyrou when he's along the boards and doesn't really have control of the puck, but he touches him for maybe 2 seconds and doesn't really take him out of the play. I'm sure Lindholm could have got there without running into Kyrou, but at the end of the day, it gives the Blues a power play.
He kind of looked like he had it in his mind that he was going to make that hit one way or the other, and he kind of lucked out in the fact that it at least looked like it may have gone the other way, like to the ref that was closer, that he didn't make that call. It was the farther ref that did. And that's because the puck was really kind of just behind Lindholm. So the puck was still in the vicinity. But the player actually didn't have it for quite a while. I mean, just long enough to where it's just too late. You can't hit him. It's slowing him up or it's interfering. At some point, you have to turn around and try and find the puck. That's what the refs want you to do. Don't necessarily agree with it. Ticky-tacky. But it could have gone either way. So, I mean, if I was on the, you know, if it were happening the other way around with the Ducks, I'd be like, oh, yeah, I could see that being a penalty. But, you know, just a little bit of penalty. Where on this side, it shouldn't have been a penalty a little bit.
I mean, at the end of the day, the Ducks end up killing it off. And I guess one of the only saving graces they have on the season this year is the penalty kill has actually been pretty good. And they really haven't, you know, allowed any sloppy goals on the power play. Obviously, the Blues do get a power play goal later on in this game, but if anything, if you're going to take any positives out of this season so far, and it's the penalty kill has been good, and you know, it's not surprising with the personnel the Ducks have. They have a lot of two-way defensively responsible forwards who can get things done on the penalty kill. We've seen it in the past. But again, you know, a pretty good effort there, especially on a weak call, because how many times have we seen that, you know, bite the Ducks in the ass and St. Louis gets their way back into the game. So,
yeah, exactly. And yeah, to your point, we do have a lot of defensively responsible forwards, and I kind of like to get maybe some that aren't that way necessarily. some that are willing to kind of put the puck in the net, that sort of deal.
A couple guys who are just cherry picking at the blue line. We'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, every team's got one, maybe two. You know, if they're a decent team, you know, someone that's, you know, not necessarily going to be, you know, right in the thick of things and grinding out defensive plays, and we got plenty of those guys who are willing to do that. So I'm not too surprised. I mean, we came into the game, I think 5th in the NHL in penalty killing. It's like one of the only stats other than goals saved above average.
Which has taken a hit over the
we
last
actually
couple games. So.
Yeah, which has obviously come back down to earth, given what we got.
I feel like we're partially responsible for that because we were talking about it kind of outside the podcast because we haven't recorded since a few games ago now, but that, eventually this is going to come back and to haunt the Ducks. So John Gibson is not going to be able to keep this up forever, and there's going to be one game here where things just break open. And, of course, we go into last night, and it happens a lot sooner than we probably would have wanted it to, and it happens in the worst way possible. But, yeah, I mean, a little bit more of the same in this game. You look at the first Blues goal, Justin Falk finds his way just wide open in the right circle, and his shot ends up a shot pass, I guess you could call it, over to Braden Shen, and he tips it in and makes a nice play to get it by Gibson. Again, a one that, it's not really Gibby's fault on this one. It's a deflection right in the prime scoring area in the slot, and, Shen makes a great effort to kind of dive and get a stick on that, but it's just the way it's rolling for Gibson right now.
Yeah, that play I didn't really like from the, I'm going to come to the goalie's defense as I always do as a goalie, but there was a play in the neutral zone that preceded them getting in and then creating the havoc or the play that ends up happening. And it was Troy Terry again on the wing where he's flat-footed in the neutral zone and just starts waving his stick at the guy who ends up just burning right past him. I mean, there was no effort to get in his way, to do anything other than just wave his stick, and hopefully it disrupts him or something like that. But he just got blown right past. And then the second one, Max Jones, the eventual goal scorer, ends up breaking away from him. But it was that's the effort I want to see out of Ducks players, where it's like, oh my God, that guy wide open. I'm not just going to stand back and see what happens with him. I'm going to try and jump and get in the way, and it becomes a shot pass where he's diving and deflecting it, and it's just like he did it by getting away from Max Jones quickly and wanting to be involved in the play versus just watching the play happen and see if it comes to him. And it results in a goal. And that's the difference I'm noticing between the good teams and what they do and what the Ducks do. And the Ducks tend to watch a lot of stuff. And this is just a prime example of a team that was hungry to try and get a goal.
Yeah, and it's just a deflated attitude that we've seen from the Ducks for a while. And, it's not fun. Losing, for sure, and losing the way they lost to the Blues the other night, but you can't take that into the next game with you. And we've seen that time and time again, that the Ducks are just lazy on some of these plays, or they're not really engaged and willing to make that extra effort, like you said, to get in front of that and block that pass. And we've seen a few plays. I think Yanni Hakanpää has been one of the only players that's been engaged in doing those sorts of things on the defensive side. So, but you can't have one guy doing that. You need everybody doing that. And as much as I thought Max Jones looked good on Saturday night, he got rewarded with the goal. If you want to stick in the lineup right now, you've got to be doing things on both ends, especially when you're a team that's offensively challenged. You're going to get more notice and more recognition for what you're doing on the defensive side. So, again, a bit disappointing for me to see that, Max Jones involved in that play, especially after Saturday night.
Yeah, exactly. And, yeah, I mean, Hakanpää's done well. I thought Fowler was pretty good. He was engaged in a lot of plays and keeping the puck in. So there were certain highlights and certain players kind of showed up. But if it's not across the board and it's not consistent 60 minutes or close to it, we'll applaud that one period and talk about it. But ultimately, the end result is the same crap, different day.
Yeah, and I mean, the Ducks did get a couple chances after that goal too. Raquel got a point-blank shot that Husso made a pretty good positional save, and then a couple minutes later, he ends up absolutely robbing Agazino on the back door, and it's a great save. Agazino doesn't really get all of it; and kind of throws it right down the center into his body, but. You've got to dive across and be in a good position to make that save to begin with. But, again, it comes down to not really having the right guy in the right place at the right time. And, Agazino checks in for Henrique because he's a healthy scratch tonight. And that's the guy you're bringing in, hoping to generate some more offense. He gets a great spot on the second line, basically saying, hey, you're going to take over Adam Henrique's job in this game. And if you want to stick around, you got to put that one in the back of the net. You got to be able to be calm under pressure and convert, and the Ducks just don't have enough of those guys.
No, and, I won't throw him too much under the bus on that one. That pass was a little bit behind him. And then I don't think they kept saying that he was trying to or should have tried to throw it up high. I think he was trying to throw it 5-hole, and it just ended up catching just the top part of the leg pad and not going in. I mean, that's about the only play he kind of had, and he just missed a little bit. But with the pass being behind him, that's also going to be a little bit difficult to kind of pick your spot because you're also trying to you have a small window to kind of make this happen and not a lot of leverage. So I think it's kind of fortunate for the goalie that he was able to even get that. But it's the same story. It's like, oh man, we were so close. We almost did something.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at it. The Ducks went into this period up 1-0, out shooting St. Louis 7-6. They get out of the second, they're out shooting them 16-12. So they had the shot advantage in that period, and St. Louis only got 6 shots, but they converted on 2 of them. And they were 2 chances that you look at the effort from the Ducks, and the second goal was a pass from behind the net that ends up finding Sammy Blais in the middle of the ice, and his shot, unfortunately.
What an awesome name, by the way.
I never know if it's Blaze or Blay. It's one of those French names.
Yeah, I think at least I think I heard it today. It's both actually on the broadcast, or I don't know. But if it's Blaze, that's awesome. It sounds like an American gladiator.
He needs to change it to just Blaze with his head.
Yeah, right.
Then you would 100% know he's an American draftee
at
that point. But,
right.
I mean, the theme of the last 3 St. Louis goals here is just kind of bad luck for the Ducks, where this pass from behind the net hits off a skate and lands right on Blaze stick, and he makes it 2-1 at that point. You look at the first goal in the third period was a pass from behind the net, found Shen wide open, and his one-timer goes in off back as his stick and makes it 3-1. And then Parayko for the fourth goal, just a simple one-timer from way out at the blue line. It hits Silfverberg under the arm and then just dips down like a brutal dip down to a couple inches off the ice. Gibby didn't see it.
Yeah, but right down Main Street, right between the legs, underneath them, where you just can't do much on it. And that's a whole nother story. These 2 games, it's been the Ducks deflecting or being the last person to touch it before it goes past Gibby. And once again that fourth goal, it was a save, and then the Ducks, instead of being able to skate it out or move it out and make a direct pass, they just throw it up the board. Then they throw it up the board, and then everyone just starts looking around again like, okay, well, now who do I got to cover because he's about to shoot from the point. Unfortunately, they hit Silfverberg. That happens in games, and it just kind of goes in. But that's the kind of thing where that happens to us a lot, and it doesn't happen to other teams. And at some point, I'm starting to think it's more of how we're playing the game, or how I should say they play the game. It was such a bad start, and that's like when those 2 goals happened early in the third, and it felt once again a lot like the first period of the other game, where it's just like, damn it, all right, well, we're not playing again. And then the rest of that period was exactly that, where it's just not really playing, passes weren't hitting, offsides a whole lot, and no one going to the front of the net, no one doing anything. I mean, we were just kind of dead after that.
It sucks the momentum out of trying to make a comeback. You go into the third period, you're down by 1, and then within 2 minutes you're down by 3. And
it was a power play goal that we gave up. That's extra demoralizing, since that's the one thing we can go like, we suck, but the penalty kill is like way up in the league, so we're doing good there.
And you felt like the message out of the Blues locker room going into the third period was to shoot the puck. They only had 12 shots after 2 periods, and you look at that flurry of chances in the 2 goals for St. Louis. They were just getting everything on net, and again, Shen's goal, just a one-timer that ends up taking the deflection, and then Parayko is kind of the definition there of what they likely heard in the locker room of just get pucks on net. I mean, you don't take that shot unless you've really been told that, hey, we need to get more than 12 shots here, and we need to start putting pucks on Gibson, because he played last night. The Ducks are kind of on their heels right now, and again, it is lucky the way those 2 went in, but it's a product of what St. Louis really wanted to come out and do to start that third period.
Yeah, I'm glad St. Louis is leaving, because I'm just tired of watching the Ducks just score on themselves, because that's equally frustrating, and that's coming from a goalie perspective on that, when they end up deflecting, it's your own guys deflecting it or standing around trying to make blocks or whatever, and it sometimes creates just so much more havoc if you just let me see it or block it all the way. Do one or the other. That the half-assing it or not quite sure what you're going to do with the guy who's shooting in front of you. It really makes a goalie have to kind of pause for a second, and then you get the slow deflection that goes in, and the goalie looks like he's really slow on the play, but he just can't pick it up quick enough.
Yeah, and ultimately, we don't need to spend too much more time on this game. The Ducks end up losing 4-1 to the St. Louis Blues, outscored 10-2 over the 2-game back-to-back series. Like you said, we can't get out of here fast enough and not have to worry about playing St. Louis, hopefully. I think it's for at least not another month. Yeah, not until March 1st and 3rd is when we'll see the St. Louis Blues again. So thank God, hopefully by that time, the Ducks have been able to, I don't know if they can turn it around at this point, but at least get somewhat better than what we saw over this 2-game stretch.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the next 3 games. One's against LA, the other 2 against San Jose. I mean, teams that we're hoping to compete with and compete for that 4th spot. And given how crappily we've played, I'm not sure if that's a word, but over the last handful of games here now, I would hope that maybe we're a little bit amped up to play against crosstown rivals or interstate rivals, and see if that maybe lights a fire up our ass. I mean, at this point, there's nothing else we can really do at this point. It's like, here's our last hope. Hey, it's a rival. Get up for that. And if we can't even do that, then F it. Just burn it down.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun and exciting to go into the first games of the season against LA and San Jose. And they're both in similar spots to the Ducks this year, and they have their own issues. But, the thing is, I think we put this tweet out here earlier today. Arthur Kaliev, who's one of the top prospects in the Kings system, got called up to their taxi squad today, looking like he could possibly make his debut against the Ducks on Tuesday. And we always know how players making their NHL debut do against the Ducks. So that's already worrying me for that Tuesday game where one of the Kings' top prospects could come up. Zegras is still withering away down in San Diego, and Kaliev
withering away.
I'm being a bit dramatic, but
yeah, just a bit.
Yeah, it feels like the writing's on the wall for that game. If Kaliev ends up getting in, that he's somehow going to find his way into the score sheet. It always happens, but it's shaping up for a good game. When the Kings play the Ducks, even lately when they've both been bad, there still is good games. There's still a couple guys for each team that have stuck around from when both teams were competing for the Stanley Cup. When you look at Doughty and Kopitar and Carter and Brown in LA, and you've got Getzlaf and Fowler and Gibson that are still here in Anaheim, right? So there is pieces of that rivalry still sticking around, and of course the Sharks as well. A lot of turnover there when you think Joe Thornton's no longer there, and Marleau is back after being away for a little bit, but they've still got guys who have bad blood with the Ducks. So 3 games that, as long as they're not blowouts, if they're good close games, I think it will revive some life at least into this season.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, the Ducks can look forward to playing against Jonathan Quick, so we have a chance to score, at least at that point.
Yeah, we hope so, right?
Oh yeah, he's had his time. It was a long time ago, so we'll see. We'll see what we can eventually muster up against them. But yeah, any player on that team who hasn't scored a goal yet this season will probably end up getting their first of the season against the Ducks. It never fails. It usually ends up happening like the 40th game of the season, but just knowing our luck, the way it's going now, everyone will get their first goal against the Ducks.
Yeah, I think it might have been Eric Stevens. I don't know if it was a tweet or through the real-time portion of the Athletic app. He put out something that was like Brock Besser has 8 goals this season, which is more than like 6 Ducks players combined. It was like Terry,
Getzlaf,
Henrique. It was.
I think even it's.
I think Silfberg was in there before
Terry,
tonight's game. Yeah, so like the guys you would expect to be scoring for the Ducks, and Brock Besser's out here. I guess Brock Besser is leading the league in goals, so it's a stat that
I would not have thought that, by the way.
Yeah, 8 goals I think in 10 games for Vancouver.
That's nuts.
Not I don't think he's even recorded a hat trick, so he's just kind of quietly getting it done so far this year. Not like the high profileness you usually see of Ovi, where he'll score, a 4-goal night and work his way to having 8 goals in 10 games. A little bit of a
he's literally. I'm not sure how many goals. I think he scored like 2 goals, and I've seen all of those, and everyone talks about it. And I've not seen one Brock Besser goal, and I've been watching like NHL, network in the morning to see how all the games went. This is weird.
I remember when I think it was it might have been in the summer, where he was rumored to be on his way out of Vancouver, and the Ducks were thrown into the ring, and I think we talked about it on a couple podcasts about the potential of Brock Besser coming over to Anaheim and what that would look like. Man, imagine what could have been Brock Besser leading the league in goals and bringing him on the Ducks this year. Now, obviously, I don't know if he'd be getting that same type of production on the team that Anaheim has right now. But you can imagine, a player Brock Besser's shooting capability playing with Ryan Getzlaf this year would be a welcome sight for Ducks fans.
Yeah. I don't know how anyone would want to play here right now that's got any sort of skill. Like, I mean, God bless Gibby. He's really sticking it out, I guess, at this point. Took a hometown discount on that contract. But it just feels, I hate to use the word the culture in the Ducks, but it just seems like everyone that comes in, whether you got promise or not, I mean, the Ducks just, it's just sad. I don't know if there's a better way to put it, but you come in, it's like anybody who has, aspiring to be better, and this year is going to be good. We're going to put in the work. We're going to compete. We're going to do that. I keep hearing that over and over again, and then it never translates on the ice. Whoever it comes in, just over the last 2.5 years, is just, you just watch their game come down to whatever it is that we're doing, whatever level we're at right now, and we can't seem to get out of it. I don't know what the solution is, because you go a third coach, a new GM, new players. I mean, I don't know the answer.
It just doesn't. It doesn't feel the same as it did when you thought. And again, it's not like players were scrambling to come to Anaheim even when the Ducks were competing for the Stanley Cup and one of the best teams in the Western Conference, but there was just a compete level on a nightly basis where, I mean, this Ducks team at one point was considered the comeback kids. No matter what, if they went behind, this was a team that would fight tooth and nail to get back into a game, and more often than not would take the game to overtime or win it, right? And I know as teams transition and players move on and the game changes, you're going to go through a period like this where you're not winning, but that mentality that we've associated with the Ducks for so long is just not there anymore. And I'm not obviously as involved in some of the other teams that are rebuilding right now when you look at the Kings and you look at the Sens and some of the other teams across the league, so I'm not sure, especially the Kings, how that transition's gone for their fan base, and moving away from being a team that's competitive and competing for the Stanley Cup every year, and if that kind of compete level has changed in their locker room now with the way they're playing and how bad they've been. But it doesn't quite look like it's the same as the Ducks. Mm-hmm. It still looks like their top players are playing well. It's just a lack of quality personnel around them, whereas in Anaheim it's a bit of both. I mean there's not a quality team in front of them right now, but also the compete level just isn't there.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't know the right answer. It's like, if there's not compete level, is that because the players it hasn't clicked in their mind, or is it the coaching staff that's told them to approach the game this way and they're just kind of doing what the coaching staff is doing? Or is it like, hey, we've been here for 3 or less years, and this is just how everyone's been playing, so we're just playing along with how everyone's playing. So I don't know if there needs to be like an infusion of. That's why I would hope at some point Shattenkirk, I was hoping, could kind of be a little bit of an infusion of, hey, I've played in St. Louis, I've played with New York, I've played and won a Stanley Cup with Tampa. Let me bring some of that experience here and see what you guys are doing and why this isn't happening, and be that leader that tells, hey, this is how we should be doing it, guys. Why aren't we doing it? And I don't know. He kind of seems like he just kind of came in and just
got sucked into the vortex.
Sucked into it. It's like, well, how do we stop this vortex, the whirlpool? How do we stop that motion And I don't know if it's a big roster change out, but I mean, you can't keep firing coaches and hiring new ones and hoping all of a sudden something clicks. I mean, I guess. I mean, you go to Carlisle, you go to Aikens, Gallant. I mean, I'd be willing to give that a shot, maybe, but I just don't know. I think even the players are just kind of waiting for Bob Murray to move out, and I don't know if they're competing enough for the coach they got in front of them. Yeah. No easy answers.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's you know what?
Things I think about.
What do you even do at this point? I think that's the question. And we talk about Shattenkirk like jokingly getting sucked into the vortex here, but you look at the way he's been playing and his compete level and his commitment over the last couple games. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a Ducks fan that says he's played well since really the first 2 games of this season. It feels like he's been a part of this system and this atmosphere now for like the last 5 years, but he's only been here for 10 games.
he came over and he fit in.
He fit in on the
wrong
side.
He just fit in. He adapted. He camouflaged to the team.
Yeah, and it's not looked good. There's a couple of guys on this team you can.
That's
identify.
Also kind of my thought of why you say Zegras is rotting away in the AHL or withering away. I don't know if that's someone that you necessarily want to bring into what we have here. Maybe he comes in and he's the fire dang it, was it not the lighter, but something that sparks the rest of the team. Like, oh look, this guy's being creative. He enjoys the game. This is fun. Maybe we get back into it. But I really doubt that he would come in and that would completely change everyone else's attitude. So if you end up doing that, that is always my concern, because that's what happened a lot in Edmonton until you got someone like McJesus in there. They had all the talent. They had the Nugent Hopkins, the Halls, the everybody. But once you got in there, it just was a culture of losing, and they were used to it. And everyone who came in, even though they had talent, would never reach that potential until they left. And so that's probably the only reason why I would say I just let Zegras just play over here, and we'll get him in next season when hopefully things change, the expansion draft happens, a new GM, whatever else happens.
I mean, we'll get right into the post-game show here, because I think the post-game topics here, because I think it transitions from what we were just chatting about, where a change of culture and what's to come next. We look at Adam Henrique getting healthy scratched for this game and what that potentially means and the reason behind it. And I think there's only 2 reasons. It's one, showing sending a message to the team and to the player here that things aren't good enough. It does come off a 6-1 loss to the Blues, and a time in the season where Adam Henrique hasn't looked great at all. He only has a goal and an assist in 9 games this year, so it wouldn't put it past me to be a healthy scratch to kind of wake up the player and wake up the team. It is just a weird decision from the Ducks right now. You don't really have that luxury to go out and healthy scratch a player like Adam Henrique to bring in Andrew Agozzino when you're trying to score goals and you're trying to win games right now. Like, as bad as Adam Henrique's been, he's still one of your best players, and it serves you better having him in the lineup even like that rather than, bringing in Agozzino, who didn't look bad. It's just a weird decision from Anaheim.
It's odd, but I think they're at the point, or at least the coaching staff is at the point, is like, throw it on the wall and see what sticks. I'm out of ideas. I've tried to inspire the team. I've tried to hold them accountable, and I'm guessing this is kind of one of those accountability things where, hey, and a lot of Ducks fans would probably say that, you can find quite a few of them that would say Henrique's our number 1 center and Getzlaf's number 2. And if he's not playing like a number 1 center, then, at some point the accountability is going to start somewhere. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I mean, I guess do it now because it's the first back-to-back games. Maybe give him a rest, that sort of deal. But I think it's more that than there's a trade offer on the table, and they don't want to get him injured before that trade goes through. I think it was literally like, listen, this guy hasn't produced. He's been non-existent. I don't think he's really winning faceoffs. I haven't seen his faceoff numbers, but I don't see him in games. Like, if I see him, it's just in passing as the puck gets dumped in and he's going for a line change. That's kind of all I see. And if that's your impact and you're logging those big minutes, maybe every now and again you need a sit down. I don't disagree with it, because I don't think if you had Henrique in here, this game was going to turn out much different. So I think it's more of a message because I think at this point the coaching staff doesn't know. I don't say that doesn't know, but they're starting to run out of ideas at this point. And so it's like, all right, well, who's not producing that definitely should be producing?
Yeah.
And he's had 9 games to do something, and he hasn't done much.
I mean, if that's the case, if that you're sending a message to Adam Henrique and to the rest of the team here, and like you said, you're kind of throwing shit at the wall and see what sticks. It's desperate. Like, it reeks of desperation for the Ducks at this point, and it's not a good look.
It's like a coach trying to save his job.
Yeah.
It's like, listen, I've got nothing else, so I'm going to do this and see what the hell happens.
You know, I'd more so lean to the trade side if Adam Henrique had been decent so far and, you know, had 5 points or so after 9 games and didn't look out of place, and we weren't complaining that the production hasn't been there, and then all of a sudden he gets healthy scratched for no reason, then you're like, okay, that could lean towards more trade. And maybe I'm eating my words tomorrow morning and Adam Henrique gets traded. Who knows? But we're in a situation right now where it could be either or, because Henrique hasn't played well and because, you know, the team doesn't really know what else to do. They've brought in, you know, Vinny Lettieri. They've brought in Isaac Lundestrom twice. They brought in Agazino. They brought in Backus. They've benched Terry twice. You know, they've benched the guys I guess they think they can bench. Max Jones has been in and out of the lineup. Like, they've tried to change things up as much as they can, barring, you know, big moves here, like scratching a key core player like Adam Henrique, or, you know, bringing up a Trevor Zegras, like really big headliner moves. And it looks like they made their first one here in benching Adam Henrique. But, you know, it really could be either or at this point. I mean, you know, if he is going to get traded at this point, and if this is a move, you know, because it was a late healthy scratch late in the day where it got announced, where it almost felt like a game time decision. You know, these are the types of moves we've seen in the past where a team will healthy scratch a guy in an important player, and it usually happens a couple hours before puck drop, and then, you know, next morning he's off to another team. So, you know, it'd be interesting to see here, because wherever Adam Henrique gets moved, he's got a big contract. He's not playing well. The return can't be major, you would think, for Anaheim.
No, and then once again, you don't know if who's trying to save their job. Is it the coach trying to save, you know, his job by just, like I said, pulling any trick he might have to possibly get people to wake up and start playing hockey, or is it the GM maybe saving his job and trying to do a big splash trade by getting Adam Henrique out of there? Bob Murray doesn't make a lot of big splash trades, so I have a hesitation to think that he's going to do that, especially if he's conceded to the fact that this is his, you know, lame duck year. He's gone after this. I don't think he's going to do anything too drastic to the lineup unless it is a dramatic improvement. So I think he's kind of hand off the team in a better position for a new GM to kind of do what they want to do versus handcuffing themselves. But it's odd that it kind of came late, but you've also heard that mantra for the last little while from the coaching staff where we're in it to win it. We're here to win. And if you're not going to win, then, you know, we're going to hold you accountable. And if you're not playing to the level we expect, then you're going to be held accountable. And I think that's their message. Is like, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're not playing what you need to do, then we need to go ahead and hold you accountable for it. So
yeah,
that's my thought on it. I feel like they're like, all right, you're not producing, and we're not here. You know, it comes from Bob Murray down to the coaching staff. Is we're not here to evaluate anybody. We know what we got, and either you're going to play or you're not. You know, but you're going to dictate how we're going to treat you or utilize you. So
yeah, and part of me believes too, like, if Adam Henrique is traded at this point, you know, how much of it is the Ducks searching for that move? Because they said they're looking for scores, so it would be a kind of a shift from what we've heard lately in terms of trade rumors for the Ducks to move out Adam Henrique for, you know, prospects or picks. If you were looking to bring in scores to this team, he would be a guy you would think, if they are searching for scores and going with that win now mantra that Bob Murray touted at the beginning of the season, that you would keep a player like Adam Henrique. And it always comes back to, for me, we don't know the direction of this team. You know, we've heard one thing, we hear other things. The way they play kind of shows a different direction. And it's like, you know, Bob Murray, the only part we've heard from him ever is that, you know, he thinks they're a team we could win now. And we haven't seen any trades or any moves this year other than the Ducks being in on Pierre-Luc Dubois, which you could probably chalk up to a move that is trying to win now, even though Dubois is only 22. So, and for Henrique too, another wrinkle to this is DB Lowry brought up in our chat. He is a partial no trade, which we know the one team on it is Columbus, because when the Pierre-Luc Dubois rumors were coming around, it said that one team on Henrique's no trade list is Columbus, so he wouldn't be a part of that trade. But other than that, like, there's 10 teams or 9 other teams than Columbus that Henrique has a say in if he doesn't want to go to. So that adds another wrinkle into if he could get traded as well.
Yeah, and I just don't understand the logic of trading who's the guy who's going to be your number one center at some point. In my opinion, I think Getzlaf's still that guy this year. He's showing it to me. He's at least the one person that's entertaining to watch. At any point, he can set up somebody. You'd like to see him maybe get a goal in here, but that's always been what you hope for. But he's still doing what you expect him to do, and he's still leading and being a captain. So it's, but his skill will regress a little bit, and all they have really in the pipeline at this point is Henrique, who's going to take over, and Sam Steele. Even though he's good, he's still not quite at Adam Henrique's level. So trading him, where does that leave you? I mean, unless you're getting a center in return and you're just expecting Sam Steele to become your number one next year, I don't know. I don't see a really great reason or any sort of return that you would get that would improve the team better, especially down that center position where we're weak already.
Yeah, I mean, you do that if you're signaling a rebuild, right? Because at that point, who moves into that spot? Sam Steele obviously moves up to second line, but at third line, is it Agazino? Is it Lindstrom? Derek Grant's out right now, and Backus is filling his spot. So, when Grant comes back, is it Backus on the fourth line, Grant on the third line? Like, it's a trade that if that happens, it signals a rebuild, because you're taking out a I don't want to call Henrique a bona fide top 6 forward, but a middle 6 center out of your lineup and saying, hey, we're going to bring up a borderline AHL player or a fourth line player, and this is who's going to replace him. At that point, you're saying, okay, we're bunkering down and we're selling off assets, and this is a rebuild, which I wouldn't hate, because at least we would know the direction at that point, right? We would know what they're trying to go for here, unless it was a hockey trade from Bob Murray where it was, Adam Henrique traded 1-for-1 for a scorer around the same age and in the same salary cap. But again, I'll bring this up 1,000 times probably this year, and until it changes, it's the lack of direction. Has us going off in 50 different places for what a healthy scratch of Adam Henrique could look like. We don't know at this point.
Yeah. There's a lot of plates spinning right now, and it's really hard to kind of figure out, where they're putting their value at this point, or like you said, where the direction is like, or it's like there's a Bob Murray just like, all right, well, I'm kind of out, so I'm just not going to rock the boat much, or I'm really just letting Aikens do whatever he wants because here's his shot and who cares, I'm not back next year. I don't know. It's It's odd.
Yeah, expansion draft, as Jace Southern brought up in our chat, throws a whole other wrinkle into this as well.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
Maybe he's, you would trade him just so you could keep one of the young kids because Jones or Steele or Terry would be exposed at the expansion draft. So I'm not even going to get down that well of another branch of why Henrique could trade it. Let's move on to our post game questions here, because we actually got a fair amount for today's show, which makes sense. We've been off for a couple days here, but St. George sports fan on Twitter said, "How long till Gibby demands a trade?" And in all honesty, like I don't think it would happen, but if anybody was at a point on this team to say, hey, like, I want out, I'm demanding a trade, it would be John Gibson.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, because it's kind of like, well, why didn't Carey Price ever demand a trade out of Montreal? Because he had to go through a lot of crappy years to get to the point where they're doing really decent right now, although because they're in a Canadian division. but yeah. I don't know. I mean, Gibson's a gamer. He wants to win, and I'm sure he doesn't mind taking a lot of shots and being good. He just wants a team that's going to compete in front of him. I can see his frustration. When he did his attack move, headlock,
Conor
throw him to the
Garland,
ground. Yeah, so you can see that frustration pop up every now and again, and it's a little bit of frustration from his teammates. If your teammates aren't playing in front of you, it gets a little depressing. But I don't. I think he's also, aware of what's going on, as far as what the Ducks are, where they're at positionally wise and what they maybe might be moving forward to. I think he's kind of waiting for that next season, that next era, a new GM, a new, direction. And at that point, maybe he can kind of see, but eventually, maybe his contract runs out before he gets to that point and then he goes somewhere else. Now, goalies aren't like players for the most part, a lot of the times. They'll get better with experience. You don't need to be a young goalie to be really good. The more experience you get, that definitely helps you. And I think Gibson is a good enough goalie that he'll be good for many, many years. So, yeah, everyone says, oh, we're wasting the best years. I mean, they're good years for sure, but I think it's not like he's got 3 good years and we're wasting it. I feel like he's got a very long career where he's going to be very good. And I don't feel that he's too worried about if this beginning part hasn't really panned out. Once it comes to free agent time,
Yeah.
If things haven't gotten in a better situation, then he'll probably be like, listen, there's no compete level here, and there's nothing that makes me think it's going to get better, so I'll just move on.
Yeah, that's where I would think we would see this pick up. I don't think he ever gets to a situation, and nor do I think he's the type of guy to ask for a trade. I think he wants to.
Most goalies don't.
Yeah, I think he wants to make things work here. I think he wants to win here, and he doesn't want to give up and say.
Wants to be that guy too.
Yeah, he doesn't want to ask for a trade and give up and be the guy that had to get out of there because the team was so bad in front of him. Like, he knows that, and everybody knows that he's, without him, the Ducks are infinitely worse. But I would think, if there was ever a point he did ask for a trade or signal to the Ducks that he wasn't going to come back, it would be close to when he's hitting, free agency near the last couple of years of his contract. Maybe it's in, his second last year. He says to the Ducks, hey, like, depending on where they are at this time, things aren't turning around. The future doesn't look bright here. I'm probably not going to come back. You can explore trading me for the last year of my contract, and that'll be that. I mean, hopefully by that time the Ducks are in a better position and he feels more comfortable at sticking around, and the team in front of him is playing a lot better. But, I don't think it's like if the Ducks lose the next 5 games, 4 or 5-0, he's going to say, all of a sudden say, hey, I want out of here. Like, it doesn't get much worse than what the Ducks are going through right now or what they went through last season. I don't think anything, if something was going to spark a trade rumor or spark him wanting to get out of here, it'd be the start to yesterday's game, to Saturday's game, getting absolutely obliterated and having no effort through the first period, and he's still here. So I can't really see him anytime soon saying, hey, I want out, trade me.
It's very rare that goalies are going to be that vocal about it. I mean, you can think of Patrick Waugh demanding a trade out, but like I said, I mean, Carey Price has been considered one of the best goalies, forever, and he's had to just dwell and wither away, as Ed likes to say, in Montreal until just this season. At least they're off to a good start, that sort of deal. But he hasn't even gone around and asked for a trade. So it's, it doesn't happen too often. You can get frustrated. Players get frustrated, but usually you don't see goalies asking or demanding trades.
Yeah. And there's not too many scenarios that you could look into and say the Ducks would win in a trade where John Gibson ends up moving. There's not many teams who are, one, looking to bring in an elite quality goaltender and then could also have the assets to go out and acquire one without significantly hurting another spot in their team. I think, in our Discord, we've been chatting about this pretty heavily over the last couple of days, and one team that kind of keeps coming up into the mix, which I think is probably the only team who could realistically pull this off, is the Colorado. Avalanche, because they've got a good team as well as having, a top 10, top 15 prospect pool in the NHL. And you look at Bowen Byram is playing for them this year, but he's not necessarily an impact player. And he's a guy they could probably replace as he is right now in their lineup. And I think the same goes for one of their other top prospects, in Alex Newhook, who's playing in the NCAA, is another prospect you could look at there. And then Colorado not really being super attached to a first-round pick because they're likely a team that's going to go far. Like, they have the assets to make that work. And you think of, then sending a player with a decent cap hit in return to cover the cost of John Gibson. Like, they could make it work. Would they be willing to give up on Grubauer And I think they're comfortable, honestly, having Grubauer and moving forward with that. Would they be willing to give up those assets to get a player like John Gibson? I don't necessarily think they're at that point where they're desperate to go out and get a goaltender like John Gibson.
Yeah, and I to your point, I just think that most teams that are really good that already have a good goalie. So anyone that's really good and looking to add a goalie is probably pretty okay with what they've got. And then if there's a team that's maybe looking for it, that's not quite there, and the goaltending is really where they really need to upgrade. Do they have the assets? Because if they're a middle of the road team, it's very rare that you're going to have that middle of the road team with a great prospect pool that the Ducks would be really interested in. Especially right now, the Ducks don't have that next goalie. We hope Dostal gets there. But he's still very, very young in his North American career, and it sometimes is a little bit of a transition from Europe to here. So, once again, even though it's nice to trade him, it's like, well, who's going to be in goal? Because Miller, if you trade Gibson, Miller's not going to try and be the starting goalie after this year. And so where are we next year? We got to throw it over to Dostal and hope, sink or swim. So there's a lot of different factors that go into that. But I don't think Gibby's really looking to move. I think he's willing to try and work it out. But if he sees that management and ownership isn't really doing anything to help him towards the end of that contract, then he's, all right, well, you guys had me for as long as you did, but you gave me nothing, so I don't feel like I owe you anything.
Another reason this isn't the season where it gets done either is the COVID restrictions and protocols this year requires teams to have 3 goaltenders on their roster at all times, which right now is Gibson, Miller, and Stolarz. Dostal's starting in San Diego. They brought up, I think, Ole Eriksson the last couple days, but Miller can't play as many games as a starting goaltender requires at his age right now. And you look at the role he's played over the last couple seasons, I don't think it's feasible or respectful to say, hey, we're trading John Gibson for the betterment of the future of this franchise. That means we're going to run you into the absolute ground for the last little bit of the season here, and you're going to play all these games. The only way I think it ever gets done is goaltender would have to come back and return in any trade, and it doesn't have to be a goaltender anywhere near John Gibson's quality, but it would have to be an NHL goaltender who the Ducks can keep on their roster and comfortably think that could split starts or play most of the starts. That allows Ryan Miller to do what he does best and get in, every 3, 4, 5 games every now and then, and kind of they can pick and choose those matchups. So just the working parts, not alone in any year, but this year with the requirements, it just isn't something I can see happening. I like how we spent 10, 15 minutes on that one question. So
I love it because it was about goalie.
Dalton had a question. He said, does this team have an identity? I think very clearly at this point in time they don't. It's almost like you said with the scratching of Henrique today is just seeing what sticks, and they don't really have a kind of direction or identity or a way they want to play right now. It's they're just kind of interchanging guys into the lineup, hoping something works and seeing what they can get out of it. And it's been a lot of what we've seen over the last couple seasons, especially with Dallas Eakins coming in. We would have hoped that maybe not by this point, but we'd at least start seeing what a Dallas Eakins team looks like. And I still don't think I'm sure I know what a Dallas Eakins team looks like. And unless this is it, and it's just pure chaos.
Yeah. I haven't seen a Dallas Eakins team. I've heard what it's supposed to be. But I haven't seen it. So I've heard them talk about how they're gonna change their way. They're gonna be quicker. They're gonna think quicker, and everyone's gonna be held responsible. And I hear that game in and game out. I'd love to give them, I guess, the benefit of the doubt. The fact that last season he was kind of inheriting the team from Randy Carlyle's system and mentality, and had to try and change things out. COVID hits. That whole thing gets squashed. Now they're in a completely different situation, but still having to deal with what COVID is and exactly how he's going to do it. So it's not an ideal situation to come in and hopefully, start up your era. But at the same time, you've got to produce. And if you're not producing, this will be a second coaching stint where, even though talent is available, it doesn't translate to wins or a good product on the ice. It's not fun to watch this team. So I have no idea what they are because I see a period where they kind of look good and you think they kind of got their attitude together, and it's inconsistent game in and game out. So it was easier when the Ducks were, the big bruisers that would hit, physically kind of wear you down, and we knew what our identity was.
Yep.
Now it's kind of like the new NHL dictates you have to kind of play almost this way, and all the players that we have don't seem to fit into that mold, or at least don't have their game system so good that it can compete with everyone else who's doing what they're doing. So once again, when they watch plays, that's not a style. It's that you're watching other people's style and you're trying to react in the moment. And when you can't think quickly and you know what your goal is, then you look really slow out there, and that's what the Ducks have looked like for the last 2.5 seasons.
Yeah, Shane said the Minnesota Wild, but orange. So, yeah.
And even then, Minnesota's doing better.
Yeah. Even Minnesota seemed to have a structure when they were in here a couple times this year. They actually looked pretty decent. It is a boring game and reminiscent of the early 2000s New Jersey Devils, where it's kind of sit back and we'll take advantage of the opportunities when we get them, and we'll just kind of suffocate you. But the Ducks don't even really have that. And
do you know we do have an identity? It's batter our goalie until you guys get tired. It's rope-a-dope. Basically, Gibson's our Muhammad Ali, and he just rope-a-dopes you until everyone's tired, and then we somehow get a goal, and you're knocked on your back, and somehow that happened in the 12th round. So that's probably about it. We're just going to sit on our goalie, hope a goal goes in, and we win 1-0.
The thing for me, too, is it's going from a team who had as clear an identity as any team in the entire league. When anybody talked about the Anaheim Ducks, it was like, oh, they're a big physical team who's going to punish you. They
had a reputation.
Yeah, exactly. They had a reputation around the league where, a lot of fans of other teams might not know every player on the Ducks, but they know how the Ducks play, and they hated it. And everybody hated to play against us and hated the players we had. And that was our identity, and that's who the Ducks were. And I know eventually you lose that as teams transition, but they haven't picked anything new up. It's almost like they're still searching for what that next step is going to be, and they haven't got to it yet. And it's just trying and trying and trying and trying until you find something. They just haven't done it yet. So it's going to be a while, and it's going to take, whether it's a change in management, which I think a lot of people agree, a change in coaching staff, an injection of new players. It's going to be I think a clean mix of all of those things. So we'll move on to one of the next questions we have here from Dimitri, which I knew this was going to come up at some point here, but if you didn't see it earlier today, the New York Rangers put Tony DeAngelo on waivers. Basically has nothing to do with his play on the ice. This is a guy who put up 50-plus points as a defenseman last year. It has everything to do with his personality and everything off the ice. Political views and everything withstanding, and I think he also got in an altercation with Rangers goaltender Alexander Georgiev in a practice, I think earlier today. And
no, it was after their game.
Okay.
Yesterday.
Yeah, and it ultimately ended up with him getting placed on waivers. So he said, "Can you see Murray claiming DeAngelo off waivers?" You know what? If this was strictly based off Ducks needing a certain player or a certain mold or type of player in a 50-plus point right shot offensive defenseman, I think normally you would say, yeah, like this is a guy the Ducks would be interested in. But then when you look at the PR side of things and the fact that this guy's just not a great human being, the Ducks management and owners and their PR team and marketing staff, there's a big red X or memo gone out tonight saying, yeah, this is not happening. There is no way in hell the Ducks would come anywhere close to Tony DeAngelo. In my mind, I just don't think that's a shitstorm they want to open up and bring into their organization.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. He's a horrible person. So, because he's got good talent. He's definitely helpful. But the rumor is that the Rangers were trying to shop him in the offseason and ended up trading him. So they ended up re-signing him for a couple more years. But he's not exactly the greatest defensive defenseman, and I don't know what that whole altercation was, but apparently he initiated it. It got so bad, once again, allegedly, that I think it's Chris Kreider had to actually intervene, and from reports, punched DeAngelo in the face. So, if it got that heated, and this guy's also had problems back when he was in the minor leagues, just a bunch of Yeah, I don't know the specifics of it, but one of those guys that say not racist, but just what's the word I'm looking for is a guy not necessarily politically correct, but a guy who just makes his teammates uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And not a guy that you really want in that a toxic kind of personality. Yeah. And the Ducks aren't going to be served well, even if he helps put up points from the back end. The Ducks are already kind of in a crappy situation, anyways, with our our not people, but just the attitude of the players. So it's like adding that into that mix is just more volatility that the Ducks just can't really afford to do.
Yeah, there's some uncomfortable alleged stories surrounding Tony DeAngelo and his treatment of other teammates and his treatment of rookie Keandre Miller with the Rangers and a bunch of other things where he's taken his opinions and his beliefs off ice and brought them into the locker room. And when you look at a team that's in pure chaos as is with Anaheim right now, it doesn't bode well to inject a player like that into the locker room. I mean, if you take everything out and look at his ability as a hockey player and his profile as a hockey player, he'd potentially be the type of player the Ducks would need. Like we said, an offensive defenseman who can put up 40 to 50 points on the right side. It's what the Ducks hoped they would get some semblance of with Kevin Shattenkirk, maybe not to the same production level, but DeAngelo really can't play defense, but he sure can play offense. But everything else he brings with him is just a huge no-go. I wouldn't personally want him on the team because of everything he brings with him. With how stingy the Ducks PR department is, they have no interest in having all of them there.
There's a reason the Rangers are waiving him.
Yep.
I mean, as good as he is, and as much as they would probably really want to keep him, they're willing to have someone just claim him. Just like, listen, it's not worth it anymore.
Yeah.
Like we're done. And if another team is saying that and they're just as desperate for points and to be, the Rangers had high expectations coming in with all their first round draft picks, this year was going to be it, and it's off to a really shaky start. You'd think they'd do everything to hold on and they'd overlook things, but at some point they said, we're throwing it up. Can anyone take this guy off our hands? I just don't want to be that team.
No, I can't see it. Like you said, it's a clear message out there when they felt like they had to put him on waivers and not
try for a trade.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure they probably did, and I'm sure they canvassed a lot of teams, or if not every team across the league, and it was just a no-go. I'm sure there were some general managers out there who would take him and would play him because especially in the Old Boys Hockey Club, there are some guys who just would not care, but there's no way any organization is going to bring this guy in right now. He's basically played himself out of the NHL, and not even really played himself out of the NHL. He's just kicked himself out with just his disrespectful behavior and everything that comes with it. I mean, like, it's just such a ridiculous situation because without that side of things in it, and you look at his season last year, like, this is a guy that teams would be fighting to get onto the roster in terms of production, right?
I think it was top 4 among defensemen.
I mean, 53 points as a defenseman is an excellent year. 53. But and you would never think a team would be moving on from a guy like that, and teams wouldn't be interested. But it just everything he's done. And I haven't dove into everything. This has been going on for a very, very long time. I haven't dove into the recent stuff he's done, but this is an ongoing situation. It's not like this developed out of nowhere. Like, there's been issues with Tony DeAngelo for at least the last year and a half, if not 2 years, with stories popping up here and there, and him being a little bit too open and active on Twitter and social media, right? So it's just.
He's blacklisted himself. So.
We'll move into the last couple questions we have here. Matthew had a bunch of questions for us, so I'll pick a couple here. He said, what do you think of the improvement of Steele, Terry, Jones, and Lundestrom?
I would answer that question with another question. What improvement?
I think it depends on the guys you're talking about. I think there's been improvement in Steele.
Steele's a little bit better. I think Jones has been a little bit better. I think he's settled into his role a little bit better. But once again, when your expectation was that he was going to be producing at a higher level than he is. I think you're just, you're kind of happy. At least he's maintaining and in his new role. Steele is going to be a center. Terry,
The complete flip side, he's been
there has
regressed,
been
if anything.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything. Yeah, and then Lundstrom, he's still a work in progress. He's going to take a little bit more time, but I still don't. I mean, he's going to fight to have an NHL career. He'll be that guy. I think kind of fights between NHL and
We haven't seen
AHL.
enough, I think, of Jones and Lindstrom yet. A bit more of Jones, definitely not enough of Lindstrom. I think we've only seen 2, maybe 3 games, and obviously he had that good game in San Diego, but it's a whole different level. He's shown.
Yeah, but I think he played last year a little bit, but once again, it depends where your expectation level is, and if you have him set really high, then you're disappointed. I think Lindstrom's where he's at. Terry's way below what I thought he should be. Steele's pretty good, a little above average of what I thought. And then Max Jones is a little bit less than what I thought, but I like his new role. So,
last question we have is from Joseph on Facebook. He said, "Can we promote Martin Madden and hire Gronborg?" In all honesty, can Bob Murray?
Didn't he sign a 2-year
I think
deal
with
Gronborg?
the ZSC Lions in Austria.
Somewhere.
So he's there.
He's up.
Hey,
He's available.
I think it'd be one of those situations where he might have an NHL out clause in his contract with that team, where if the NHL team did come calling, doesn't seem like an in-season hire by any means, and I don't think the Ducks are honestly in a position where they're going to move a coach at this point, because that again is Bob Murray admitting he did wrong, and I don't think I've said this once before, but I think. Finally, I think if anybody's going to go out first, it would be Bob Murray at this point, because I think ownership might just get fed up at some point that Bob Murray has been feeding them these pipe dreams and feeding everybody this pipe dream that the Ducks are a win now and a competitive team this year. And clearly they're not. They have one player who can win them a game, and that's why they've won, 4 games or 3 games this year is because of John Gibson.
Yeah, I think, I'm on the same page. I think Bob Murray's probably the first one to go, because I think ownership would probably say, let's get a new GM in here that wants to put his coach in. Now, whether that's Gronborg or Gallant, I don't know which one you'd want to go. I'd probably stick more with Gallant, in my opinion, because I think he's a great coach who's been given the shaft way too many times. But I don't think you're going to see Bob Murray get rid of Akins to pick up Gallant or Gronborg. So I think you'll have to wait and see a GM move, and I don't think ownership's going to do that until the season's over and the expansion draft happens, and then it's, all right, part ways. We have everything we have, and it'll probably be quite honestly, promotion from within as far as GMs go, because I think they're going to want to have some sort of say on how that expansion draft and the next draft happens. So you maybe want someone who's already kind of with Bob Murray and knows what's going on.
And something has to break here at some point. Something has to change or whatever it may be, and whether that's we wake up tomorrow and Adam Henrique's been traded, or the Ducks lose a couple more games and a trade has to happen. You got that feeling that they're almost at that point where they need to do something, whether it's firing a coach, which I don't think is the right move at this point, or the ownership says, okay, we've had enough, Murray, you're out, and Martin Madden maybe steps as interim GM for this year, and then they do the search at the end of the season, which again doesn't seem like an option they'll go to with expansion draft looming in July. And you're just at that point though where how can you continue to do this for 46 more games without something changing? And again, we're only 10 games in, but when in a shortened season, this is 20% of the way through the year now, where in a normal year this is 20 games in and we're not surprised to have trade rumors or coach firing suggestions or whatever it may be. So you got to take that into account. It's only 10 games, but it's a shortened season, so it really are pretty far into the season at this point.
Yeah, so at the 56, 82. So, yeah, you got to think we're almost 30-odd games into the season at this point. So, compared to a normal season. And, and if we're struggling, definitely here. But, yeah, I actually think that might be more of a scenario where you'll have the interim GM come in at least just for a little bit, and then maybe he can kind of work with a new GM as long as he stays in that assistant GM mode. But I don't know. I don't know. There's no good answers right here. We're all just trying to hold on for as long as we can. But you can't keep losing, at least in this fashion. That's
Yeah,
too
I mean,
embarrassing.
like we mentioned earlier in the show, we got a big game coming up against the Kings on Tuesday, and then I believe is it a back-to-back against San Jose? No, it's not. It's a Saturday and Monday game.
No.
Oh no, that's wrong. It is a back-to-back. It's Friday, Saturday against the Sharks. Friday the 5th and Saturday the 6th against the Sharks. So 3 big games coming up there, and I think the Kings one is important because if you go into that game against a team that you're expected to be, around the same skill level at, and record-wise, they're pretty similar. The Ducks are now 3-5-2, and the Kings are 3-3-2. If you get hammered there by the Kings, that is not a good look. Because getting hammered by the Blues, it is what it is. The Blues are the top team points-wise in this division right now. But you lose some close games against Arizona, and the table, the standings are kind of playing out the way we thought they would at this point, where it's St. Louis, Colorado, Vegas, Minnesota, the top 4 teams, and then a significant gap down to Anaheim, San Jose, LA, and Arizona. You can't go into Tuesday's game and get absolutely bodied and outplayed by the Kings, because that is not only your rival, and it's an embarrassing look, it shows that you're not even close to a team that some people thought, myself included, is worse than you this year. And, the Kings aren't looking great by any means, but there's at least some promise and some hope there with some of the players they have. And in some games, they actually take over and look like the better team.
Yeah, and if you lose to them, especially in an embarrassing fashion or a lackluster effort again, and if you can't get yourself amped up to play against the Kings, no matter where you are in the standings, at least that's your rival. That's what you should get. At that point, it's an embarrassment for the fans. It's an embarrassment for the players. It's an embarrassment for management, and it's an embarrassment for the ownership. And if all of those things keep happening, something's going to change. Eventually, ownership's going to say, "Done, over it. Let's move on. We can't get up for this game. We're out. Let's go. Let's. You're gone. You're gone."
Well, we'll end the show on some positives here. The goals played tonight wasn't streamed on YouTube. It was a radio broadcast, but Trevor Zegras grabbed the shootout winner. Jamie Drysdale got his first of the preseason. So the two most promising Ducks kids looked good tonight. So the future bodes well in some sense when you've got those two guys still playing well. And for anybody that's watched the broadcasted games that they have had for the goals this year, you've seen Trevor Zegras look like he's clearly the best player on that team already. So good signs there. At least goals games are exciting to watch, and we can all speculate and await Trevor Zegras' debut whenever that does come, if it comes this year. So we will be live on Tuesday after the game against the Kings, and then as it was for this weekend, same for next weekend with the Sharks games. We won't be live after Friday's game. We'll be live after Saturday's game to recap the back-to-back series against the Sharks, which is hopefully better than this back-to-back series against the Blues, because I don't think we're going to get many viewers after back-to-back horrible losses to the Sharks. The Blues is one thing, but to the Sharks, it's a whole nother ball game. Yeah. So hopefully we'll have some wins to talk about, some better play. But thanks for everybody who coming out. As I mentioned, if you do like to support the show, make sure you check out our Patreon. We release at least 2 bonus episodes every month, and they're a ton of fun. You also get to join in on our Discord chat, which lately has been pretty lively with trade rumors.
Keeps
so
going.
It's been a pretty fun place to chat. And then, as always, if you want to head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review for the show, it helps us out. It helps get our name out there, and helps get more people not only live into the chat on the post-game show, which is a lot of fun, but to listen to the show over the next couple of days too. So we always appreciate that. Stay tuned with us on social media over the next couple of days. You'll see announcements on who's going to be live on Tuesday night and any other news that we put out throughout the week. So again, thanks for coming out, guys, and we'll see you after the Kings game on Tuesday night.